everyone. I'm Ina from WIEF Foundation. Welcome to this workshop, which marks the second edition of the WIEF Idealab 2020 series. Now, before we start, please allow me to go over a few house rules. In order for this workshop session to be fully beneficial to all of you, it's best we make it all interactive and two ways. Participants are encouraged to ask questions, give opinions, and share related experience throughout this workshop. By default, all your microphones will be muted at the starting of the program. This is to ensure that we minimize interruptions. To ask questions during the session, please unmute your microphone and introduce yourself or your organization you represent. You may also use the chat options to ask questions at any time during the session. We will do our best to get your questions and comments addressed. This workshop will last for approximately 90 minutes and will end at 6:30 p.m. Malaysia time. Please note that this session is recorded and will be posted on our official YouTube channels and social media platforms. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to kick off this session, let's warm up with a MOCAfest performance by Mr. Zohab Khan, an international artist based in the United States. Zohab is a performance poet, motivational speaker, a didgeridoo player, and hip-hop artist, and also a YouTube filmmaker. Now, without further ado, Mr. Zohab, take it away.
Cool. Thank you very much, Roz, for that lovely introduction. Didgeridoo, that's how you pronounce it. The didgeridoo is right here. That'll come out just shortly. But I am a poet, so I'm going to share two quick poems with you. And thank you for everybody that's watching right now. And congratulations on making a great decision on being part of this workshop. I'm sure Yacoob is going to do a great job. Cool. Based in the United Kingdom as well, but United States, same. Let's do my first poem. This is a poem that I wrote for a TV channel in Australia, which is my country of birth. And it was about, they said to write a poem about one of my favorite places. And one of my favorite places is inside of a mosque. So come inside and you'll find no monsters reside here. Mind clear when head to the ground, no sound, mosques be lively silent. I just find this the best place to find pieces of puzzles just fit better when here. We no longer Bedouin cameleers, we now doctors, lawyers, engineers, we now poets, CEOs and comedians. They say we be in dark days, mind haze. But when I enter the mosque prostrate, I see clearer pathways. We say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu at least 10 times a day, aka, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you. You know not peace until you stare at majestic scroll calligraphy atop domes. Mosques be resting places for traveling souls. Our minarets, our lighthouses, calling us home. Call me your brother, for we were never meant to travel this life thing alone. Cool. I assume you're all clapping. Great, thank you very much. Here's my second poem. This is a poem that I wrote quite some time ago. Whilst I was sitting on the couch with one of my best friends in the entire world, and we were watching TV, and he's a Coptic Egyptian, and I am a Australian Pakistani Muslim, and there was sectarian violence going on the TV. And we're like, bro, why can't the whole world get along like we get along, right? And I got an idea for a poem. I ran to my room and I wrote this. Imagine a world where people are treated as equals. Imagine a world where people are not categorized by skin tone, religion, gender, or size. Imagine a world viewed through the innocence of a child's eyes. Imagine no sorrow when a soul dies, for a soul flies after closed eyes. We try to live our lives in New York minutes, because we be pushing our lives to new world limits and new world orders, while the old world still busy burying daughters, for they prefer sons, only for those sons to pick up guns and kill sons of righteous ones, and those righteous ones tell their sons that those sons killed their sons, so their sons killed those sons, and sons kill sons and sons, kill sons and sons, kill sons, and Sun Tzu was wrong. For there is no art in war, for art is love, and there's no love in war. Imagine we loved more, and love for the sake of love, for the love of love is the best love above all. Imagine a world of no wars, and hearts with no doors exposed raw. Imagine the life of another being the life of a brother. Imagine every embrace filled with the love of a mother's. Imagine a world of no strangers and only kindred neighbors. It's about time hatred gets outdated and our differences are celebrated. For our forefathers waited, but we, the people, shall wait no more. Today we take our stand. Imagine no French burqa bans and bikinis in Afghanistan. Imagine Hong Kong, Hanukkah and white Christmas Mecca. Imagine no offshore refugee process prisoners and a history of indigenous prime ministers. Imagine Palestinians marry Israelis and make beautiful beige babies. Imagine a world where people are treated as equals. Imagine a world where people are not categorized by skin tone, religion, gender, or size. Imagine. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think I have about 1 minute left in my quick 5-minute performance. So I'm going to share one of my favorite instruments in the entire world, which is a didgeridoo. It also goes by the name of a yagaki. And then I'll call it a wrap right after that. I also want to say thank you to WIEF, and you guys have done so much for me over the years, and it's been an honor being a MOCAfest artist. So cool. I think that's all of my time. Thank you so much. Enjoy your workshop.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Thank you, Zohab, for the wonderful performances. Now, let's get the ball rolling with our trainer. He is the Director of Client Services of ASEAN region from Virtusa Inc. Malaysia. Now, Virtusa Corporation is an American information technology service company founded in 1996 in Sri Lanka and has its headquarters in Southborough, Massachusetts, United States of America. So please help me welcome Mr. Mohammed Yacoob. And now, Mr. Yacoob, over to you.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you very much. How are you guys doing? All smiles, okay. That looks great. Thanks, Zohab, for that wonderful intro early on. I just wanted to thank WIEF for this opportunity to bring us all together. It's been, I think, 3 or 4 years since I was a young fella in Singapore, and it was a wonderful time meeting all these lovely people. So for today, let me quickly share my screen. Okay, so the title of this presentation, as decided by the WIEF team, was on taking a business online, starting strong and growing fast. And I thought it was very apt. I actually mentioned to Saeed that this was perfect, the way they've worded it and the scope of it. So what we'll be looking at today, oops. So before I jump in, I just want to take a moment to thank all the people who've registered. So this is basically the demographics of folks who've signed up, and we have all the way from high school to PhD holders, across the globe. So a very good morning, afternoon, evening, and stay safe during these times. So the plan for today is basically to look at a 5-step process that has worked well, whether you're a startup, entrepreneur, or even a corporation, right? So these are the 5 steps. And this is what we'll be covering for today. Now, before I jump into that, allow me to share a bit about myself. And all right, so I graduated from International Islamic University in Kuala Lumpur. So for those of you who've been to Malaysia or to KL, You may have seen this on the borders of KL, as you head towards Genting Highlands or elsewhere. So I did my computer science, and thereafter I moved to Japan, where I did my master's. That's not my wife, it's a good friend. So got some training in Aikido and all that, and also happened to get a master's in e-business management. So thereafter I came back to Malaysia for a engineering company. They were into what we would call as high performance computing, semantic tech, and really cutting edge stuff. They were so cutting edge and advanced that by the time I left, they didn't even exist after 10 years, right? So then I joined a company called Groupon, right? So these guys were basically a clone of Groupon US in Malaysia. It was called GroupSmall, and it was one of the biggest highlights in my life, I would say, partly because e-commerce was just getting started in this region, and Groupon happened to be one of the pioneers in Southeast Asia. And for those of you who may be familiar with Rocket Internet, this clone factory out of Germany, they've got about 200 plus internet companies. So they are masters of understanding internet businesses, scaling them up, and very often they'd sell it back to the owner. So in this case, they cloned Groupon for rest of the world, exited it, and then basically when the Americans wanted to launch in other markets, they bought over Groupon, right? I'm also quite excited because one of my good friends from Groupon days, Manisha, is actually here as a participant. You may have seen her on screen. So it's good to have a fellow trooper who's been through that journey to be in this today. Thereafter, I moved on to another company called Lazada. So they are the e-commerce giant for Southeast Asia. They still are the market leaders, I would say, very much like Amazon and Alibaba sort of combined. So I left Lazada around the time where they were acquired by Alibaba. So in Lazada, the focus was how do we get sellers to come online, help them sell, what sort of products do they put, how do they market, and how do they scale, right? So this we did not just for Malaysia, but across the other Southeast Asian markets, which was about 7 to 8 at that point in time. And that was the role, and that's the experience with Lazada. And then I moved on to a company called Maxmoney. This is a very traditional business that does money exchange, like your foreign currency exchange or remittance, cross-border remittances, and wholesale banknotes. So it's very regulated by the central bank. And this is a very brick and mortar business wanting to go into the digital realm, right? So my scope was how do we get this traditional business online, either through web, mobile apps, or other channels, and tap into online segments and newer customers. So that was a focus on Maxmoney. Along the way, I've also done consulting projects for telcos, Google Android. Back when I was in Japan, there were still early days looking at what are the future trends and how should they position Android and so on. And currently in Virtusa, as Ina introduced, so it's an IT services company. So we do anything from blockchain to AI, cloud technology to digital transformations across the globe. So we have market presence in about 20, 30 different countries, primarily based out of North America, but in Europe and in other parts of the world, excluding China and excluding just China. That's a bit about me. And let's get started. So the first thing, I assume all of you have done some homework based on the business model canvas. So let's quickly recap on what was shared earlier, so we can get a view on what exactly is the purpose of this business model canvas, and how is it helpful for us, right? So I'm just going to keep the screen open so I can see if you guys are saying something about it. All right. So business model canvas is a one-pager where you can have idea of whatever you're working on. So it could be a business, it could be a side hustle that you have, or it could be something that you want to have as a thought leader and so on, right? So this one-pager can help you summarize the whole value proposition from customers to challenges, and how you can enable that, and how you can actually structure your business in a way that it's very productive and useful, And more importantly, how can you keep improvising it as you iterate, right? So I've shared this across and I got a few responses, and I asked one of the participants, so thanks to Manisha, I'm going to share her business model canvas. All right. So this is for a company called Cult Creative. They're a professional networking app for future-focused creatives who want to connect with like-minded peers and industry leaders to learn, share, and hone their skills. Right. So think of it like LinkedIn, but specifically for creatives. Right. So that's what I understood from the value proposition. And then their target segments are 25 to 34-year-olds, creatives and entrepreneurs who are looking to network with industry leaders, connect with like-minded peers, and potentially find gigs or jobs. The second segment is for 34 to 45-year-old industry leaders who want to hire, mentor, and invest in new startups, right? So for them as a discovery platform. And the third segment, for fresh graduates and young executives who want to build connections and look for better prospects. So those are the three segments I've identified, pretty clear. So if any of you have any questions at any point in time, I think there's a button where you could raise or feel free to mention it in comments so we can pick it up. So I'll take a pause at every section so you have time to ask a question and then we can respond to that, right? Okay, so the customer segments are here. So we've looked at that. So now let's look at the left side, which is the product side. What are the problems that this business is out there to solve? So the first thing they've identified, which is very good, they're very specific, looking at one market, Malaysia. They're saying the unemployment rate is about 5%. It's actually slightly higher than that now. Highest in a decade. So they want to alleviate unemployment rates. Number two, platforms like LinkedIn and others do not serve the creative community specifically. So how do we help creatives to network and showcase? So that's number two. And the third problem statement is creatives are also looking to improve their skills, network, and also have improved their likelihood of expanding their careers. So it's quite connected to the second one, I would say. But basically, networking platform to find employment, to learn and grow. So the solution they're offering is a networking app. It could be web, I presume, where you have online, offline events. There's a job board as well. And then you have premium content for users who've registered. So that's pretty clear. So you have a networking app, people can register, showcase their portfolio. And I guess if there are investors or companies that are interested in talents, then they can look at these profiles and hire them for their jobs and gigs. And also in terms of learning, they offer premium content, which is great. All right, so let's quickly look at how they're going to find their customers, right? So they've mentioned online and digital marketing. So when we say online, I would encourage folks to be a bit more detailed. Like, what do we mean by online? Is it a website or is it on existing platforms, or would it be like mobile app, right? So if we say we're going to find customers online, so we will have to mention, let's say number one is website. Number two, it could be a mobile app which they have to download or an existing platform. So that's one way to get your customers. Second, they're saying key opinion leaders who could be on other platforms, but driving them to our mobile app or website, right? And the third thing is on-ground events and festivals where they have brand partnerships and they can acquire customers. So very clear on that. So what's important here is that, okay, we've got a value proposition. We've identified our customers. Now we have a problem statement with some potential solutions to that. We know how to get to customers. So the next piece is going to be, what is our unfair advantage or entry barriers that we have that cannot be replicated by others? So one of the things I've mentioned is current influence and reach amongst the creative community. So that's great. So they have fantastic access. They're pretty strong in the market, partly because of the business they're in or the network they have. So that's great. Number two is trust and loyalty among key opinion leaders and brands, media and growing fan base, right? So this, when it comes to creative, what I've noticed is this is something that's very, 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 very important, because they tend to be within their clique, their clique, their community, their crowd. And if you can be part of the in crowd, then that is something that cannot be replicated easily by outsiders, right? So it's great. So they've identified two very clearly. In terms of revenue streams, what we may want to mention is how are we going to monetize? Number one, is this subscription-based model, or is it a freemium? So I sign up for free, and to access premium content or for premium gigs I want to bid, I pay a fee, right? So that could be a freemium model. Or the third option could be everything is free. Only when you find a gig, let's say a job or an opportunity to perform, then you take a revenue cut from that. It could be a commission-based model, a success fee of sorts. So those are three potential streams that you could look at. Now, if you have companies on board, and if they need certain projects, and I presume they can also list, and we can charge a fee. Initially, it can be free, but upon certain volumes, then you could potentially even charge companies for listing, right? So there could be a listing fee potentially down the road. So that's on the revenue side. Looking at the cost structure, you want to identify what is the cost to acquire one customer, right? Or one creative to join the platform, or a company to join. So in this case, we may want to spell it out. Later down, I'll show an example of how you can calculate customer acquisition cost. This is very important. And the second thing you want to measure is also lifetime value. What do we mean by lifetime value? So let's say a creative comes on both the platform for, let's say, as long as they are engaged, they're active in the platform, which could be 5 years or perpetually. How much can we monetize on that? So that data you can only gather as we move along, but it's good to have an initial understanding of what that could potentially be. What are the other costs involved, either fixed or variable, whether it comes to your setup, your technology, maybe your hosting, people you want to hire, those kind of factors, variables or fixed. I think you may want to have a ballpark figure just to get an estimate to see the viability of this business, that when you have a product market fit, your costs don't overrun your revenues, right? So you want to have an equation where your revenues are higher. Initially, the cost can be higher, obviously, as a startup, but over time, you want to see how long does it take for me to become break even and profitable eventually. So that's a good first attempt, I would say, for a startup, for iteration number one. So what you want to do is get your first draft out and test out with your potential customer segments. Take a very simple product. It could be on paper. It could even be an app or a web. Very simple one. Meet your potential customers or segments and ask them for feedback. Hey, would you sign up? What would your pain points be? Validate whatever you've put on this business model canvas and iterate. So now once you've done like 10, 20, 30, 50 people signing up or giving you feedback, then you go with the second iteration, so on and so forth, until you have enough validation to say, we can start building our minimum viable product. So that's the purpose of this lean canvas. Now, majority of you who've signed up are either people from academia or from consulting backgrounds, or people who are doing different things. So I'm guessing for you, what might be important is, how do I position myself as a thought leader or as an industry expert in whichever segments that you may be, and how could you apply the same lean canvas for yourself? So you may want to do this exercise. Assume you already have it, keep it by the side, and maybe take notes as we progress to reflect and see how this could be relevant for you, right? So the second question I had asked was, if there's one key takeaway or a challenge for which you need answers, what would it be, right? So one of the questions that was asked was, I'm a beginner and a graphic designer, but would want to know how I can use online to help my business, right? So it's fantastic, great. What I would recommend is, if you can take a piece of paper and pencil or pen and as we progress through the presentation, if you could take notes and then maybe reflect on the questions that I ask and jot down your responses, you'll get a bit more clarity. Towards the end, you'll have a better picture of how you can actually take your skill online. So it could be graphic design, it could be writing, it could be presentations, anything at all, right? That's of value, and that can be how we could monetize on that and build a business around it online. So the next question that was asked is, will I need much funding to start an online business? The simple answer is, it depends. It could be anything from very minimal investment or funding to some level of seed or what do you call equity or VC funding. It really depends on the business that you're doing. But what I will share today is something that would require very minimal, if at all, or most of the time even free for starters. All you would need is probably a mobile phone, or if you have a laptop or a camera, that's good enough for you to get started. And then as you progress, as you monetize, how you could build on that. So that's a short answer to your question. The third one was how a full-time traveler can be a successful entrepreneur. I'm really grateful someone asked this question. This is the COVID season. Obviously, people are not traveling as much, and we may be concerned. But I can tell you for sure, if at all, when it does, the markets open and you can travel across borders and stuff, it would be a fantastic time to actually venture into this journey. A lot has happened in the past. I'm going to share 2 or 3 examples as we progress, and you will see how many different ways there are as a full-time traveler that you can monetize, right? And how it can be very, very fulfilling and a very successful enterprise. So hold on, your question will be answered. If you still didn't find your answers, and towards the end, I'll be happy to take it as a question, right? So with that, let me quickly check if there are any questions. I see. Okay, what is the effective way to do online marketing? So that would be answered in a section called promotions. It's quite comprehensive. So hold on to that until we get there. All right. So does anyone have any questions so far? Anything that's really burning and you really need addressed? You can unmute yourself and speak. Okay, excellent. So I take it there are no questions. So let's get started. Okay. So if you've already done the business model canvas, all right, if you've already done, okay, I see a question, how to convince our clients, customers, regardless of our product. Excellent. We will share that in a bit. So let's get the basics first, and then slowly we will progress to how you can communicate this value proposition across to your customers regarding your product or service, right? So if you've done the business model canvas and you still don't have much clarity, or you're still figuring out your big idea, right? Let's get through a very simple 3-step process. So if you have a piece of paper and you still need answers, what I'd like you to do is to answer these questions as we progress, take some notes, so you'll have some level of clarity by the time we finish these 3 sections, right? So the first question you want to ask yourself is, what do you love doing? What are your personal interests? So like, for example, earlier we had a few people say they love traveling, right? Or I'm good at graphic design. And that's my passion and interest. Some of you may have other skills. I'm looking at plants, I'm thinking gardening, anything at all. What are your interests and what would you love doing, right? That's the first thing you want to take some notes, write it down. Number 2, you want to ask yourself, if your friends were to ask you for advice, what would they ask about, right? Your close friends, your uni friends, colleagues, whoever they may be. If they were to ask you, as a friend, what do they ask about usually? Is it personal life problems, or is it health, or is it about your business? Is it Is it about your skill? What is it that they ask about? You may want to write down maybe one or two of those things, two skills, if it's very clear. The third thing you want to ask is, what are you naturally good at? Some people are amazing when it comes to networking, when it comes to presenting, when it comes to just speaking on any topic, right? They're fantastic at it. Some might be very much of introvert. They love reflecting, thinking, writing, sharing. So these people may want to write stuff. Maybe this is something they already have a blog, right? So this is something that they're naturally good at, or they have green fingers and they love planting. Some people are wonderful with churning out business ideas. I have a few friends who are you can give them any possible scenario and they can tell you ways to monetize that. How can they convert that as a business? So whatever you're naturally good at, jot it down. Put down 1 or 2 or 3, as many as you may have, right? Write it down. The fourth question you want to ask, what unique experience have you had that could be of help to others? Now, earlier I was sharing about my experience of my journey of how I've done computer science, e-commerce, my life in Japan, consulting projects I did, and then coming back how I was in high-tech space, e-commerce when it was still early days when we were just getting started in Southeast Asia, how we scaled that, not once but twice, and how these two companies were massive successes. Thereafter, I also did something on my own where, I actually was so curious. I traveled to China, bought products and started selling online, right? So I've seen the whole spectrum of this. Now, very often when you have people who have unique experiences, they may have from a very specific standpoint. Either they could be as professional or as an entrepreneur or just as a supplier or a vendor, so on and so forth, right? But your journey is very unique. You may have seen this at a point in time when it was still very early, or you may have seen that industry from multiple vantage points, as a merchant, as a platform provider, as an expert, right? So the various ways your journey is going to be unique to you. So if you are a graphic designer, you would have very specific experiences that are very unique to you, right? So maybe you may want to highlight 1 or 2, put it down in that piece of paper. The fifth question is, what are you knowledgeable about? Are you very clear about your skills or your learned strengths? Maybe you've done ACCA, you're a kick-ass accountant auditor. Could I use that to help people, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're naturally good at, but you're really skilled at it by virtue of you having studied or you having practiced this as a profession. So those learned strengths, put it down in the paper, maybe 2 or 3, whatever you may have as a skill. Now, if none of these have given you answers, but you may be a professional who has done, let's say, accounting, consulting, whatever, or you're an IT professional, or you are a farmer, for example, but you are interested in something and you're very, very excited and very passionate about this. And let's say, imagine this is about doing videos online, for example, right? And that's not your core skill. Whatever you want to learn or something that excites you, put it down in the list, right? So this may not necessarily be anything that's your core strength or anything that you've covered in the past, but this is something new and that is something that really excites you at the moment and you want to venture into that. Write down those 3 things, right? I'm going to take a pause here just so you guys, have a bit of time to put your thoughts on paper. I'll quickly check if anyone has shared anything. All right. If you have any questions on these, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. I see quite a number of you taking notes. I see Charmaine smiling. I see she's got all the answers. That's great. Fitria is smiling as well. Good. All right. So let's move on. So now that you've documented all these, look at what you've got. Do you see a pattern in that? What topics do you find recurring in this, right? Could you cluster them together? Whatever topics, whatever you've written down for the last 6 questions, could we put them in topics together? Do you see a pattern in that? Can we cluster them? Or any topic maybe, you know, that excites you or you want to learn more, maybe put that aside as well, right? All right. Okay. I see most of you have done that, whoever is on video. All right, let's move on, right? So this is something that's very much your core, what you really believe in, and something that's very meaningful and internal to you, right? The second thing you want to look at is something that's external, right? So you want to look at how could you offer something that's in need in the market. So it could be information, it could be entertainment, or it could even be skills that you bring to the table, right? But more importantly, how do we match what's internal to you with the externally, with what's in need in the market? So it could be something that's health related. For example, a lot of people sell health related products or staying fit. It could be content, it could be products, it could be services that are specific to that, right? So do you see your pattern, like in the topics that you've identified earlier, are there anything that's related to health? Is there anything that helps people with generating more wealth? Do you have skills that you can help people to generate more money online or to become wealthy, to make investments, specific skills like trading, equities or investments, so on, right? Anything that can help people with generating more wealth. Do you see anything that can help people with success? Now, success means many things to many people, right? It could be in terms of personal development. It could be in terms of being successful as an artist or being successful as a professional. Whatever the domain, whatever you've identified, can you help people achieve success? Fourth thing is technology. This is something that's really, really important these days, right? It could be as simple as fixing your laptop, you know, developing an app or graphic design. It could be any skill that you see that you have that is relevant to the market that is needed. And there are various ways you can see what are top skills that are required or market needs or wants, where you can pair what you have to this, right? Health and beauty. This is a very, very, very big space and a segment in the online world, right? There are people doing beauty products, people giving beauty tips. It could be videos, it could be all sorts of information, or even people sharing just tips on beautifying themselves, right? As videos or what. You may have seen a lot of influencers do that. So that's another thing you could identify. Or simply, how can I help people be happy? Right? This is something that's very, very, very important. Now, whatever is shared here are some of the biggest trends and online channels or platforms where people are monetizing currently as we speak, right? So do you have anything that can cater to helping people be happy, right? Or relationships. I've mentioned intimacy. You'd be very, very surprised and amazed at the amount of money that's being spent online with regards to these things. Some may be legal, some might not be. So let's keep to the ones that are very clear and clean. So that is a very big space. People need help with relationships, with whether it's at work, personally, or at office, wherever it may be. How do I build long-lasting relationships? How do I have a meaningful conversations, meaningful engagements with people and stuff? You may have seen a lot of these tech online gurus, right? Like you may have seen inspiring videos from Jay Shetty, Gary Vaynerchuk, so many different people who just talk about how can you be very grounded with the relationships or spirituality and so on, right? How could you add value to that? If you see a pattern, put down any of these. And one of the biggest other segments is personal development, right? Self-help section. You go to a bookstore, you're going to see this, and that's a good indicator how big this space is. And in the online world, it's the same thing. These are some of the biggest revenue drivers online that's in demand in the market. Do you see something that you have that can cater to this? If not, can you apply anything as a niche within these segments? Or if you're interested in these segments, how could we build a value proposition that can help people, right? Now, having done 1 and 2, let's quickly jump into the third question. Before that, in case you're wondering, okay, this is all well and good. How am I going to sell this online, right? Let's not get to that. What do I sell online? How do I sell this online, right? So if you don't have a product or a service and you're still contemplating with an idea, the very simple question you want to ask is, how can I enhance other people's lives? How can I help? And if you can find 1 or 2 things, put it down on your paper and let's build on that. All right. So I'm going to take a quick pause. If you have any question on the last 3 slides that were shared, feel free to ask now. Look at the chat window. All right. None here. Let's move on. So now that you've identified your big why or your big idea, what is the next thing you need to do? You want to look at your idea that you want to share, whether it could be information product or a service or an e-commerce product or platform. How do I funnel this? Now, what do we mean by funnels, right? Let me jump into this. Before I jump into funnels, if you're selling any product, I just wanted to get this done with so we don't have to revisit e-commerce products specific. There are a gazillion ways. You could sell your products on your own website, on other third-party e-commerce website. It's a very straightforward process. You sign up, get your domain for free. You could add products to sell on those platforms, choose a payment method, PayPal, whatever the payment gateway in your respective countries, choose a delivery method, and you have templates. This is a standard. So whether you go on Amazon, whether you go on Jumia, Lazada, eBay, it's all well done and dusted and documented. So you can right away get on any platform very easily and get started with this. So I won't be sharing much on just listing product, right? We will focus a lot more on the marketing side of things. So one example is Shopify. They've got 1 million+ merchants across all scales and sizes. So you can list your products. So here I've taken a screenshot of how do I sell everywhere, right? So you can have online store, point of sale, different channels. It could be on other platforms, not just on Shopify. How can you cross list? And you can start. This is for Malaysia. Quite a number of you have registered from Malaysia, so I thought I'll highlight this. So there are various channels where you can list on one platform, and then you can cross list the same products across Lazada, Leilong, Shopee, whatever platforms there are in this region where you can service just by listing on one platform. So very seamless, very easy. And we had a few from the African continent. So I've met, Jumia is a wonderful platform. Whether you're an individual seller or a existing retailer, you could go on Jumia, and this is huge. They're doing a wonderful job in those markets. And likewise for Middle East, Australia, and so on and so forth, right? So that's on e-commerce. Now, let's say you're not selling a product, but you're offering a service or an information product. You want to go through something that I call as a sales funnel, which looks something like this. So let's say I have a skill. I'm going to take the example of the gentleman who asked the question as a graphic designer. So I'm going to have to start with as simple as something as a blog. It could even be a Facebook page where you have a portfolio of designs that you've done, templates that you may have, or if you have a website of your own, fantastic, right? So I'm going to put all those things as well as stuff like cheat sheets or tricks that people can use and benefit from. The next thing I want to have is something slightly more advanced. Now, people who may have consumed your free content, they want something more. So you can have something like an ebook, or in the case of Cult Creative, a members only section where you have content very specific for them or things like that, right? Now, once that is done, the third thing you want to have, this is a very simple, four-step funnel, but it could be a lot more, right? You could have 8 or 10, up to you. So a very simple one, you would need at least free content. Number 2 would be something where people pay for, where it could be something more valuable. The third one is something which I've given as an example. So in the case of the graphic design, you may want to conduct online workshop. And this is something very much in demand in this day, like right now as you speak. And I'm foreseeing that to be the case for the next 6 months at least, where people are taking a lot of webinars, online courses, free or otherwise. And if you're really good at what you do, and if you've identified your target segments well, and they've consumed your free content, they see this guy is great, I want to have more. And they've bought your ebook, tried it out, oh, this is great. And they sign up for your online workshop. So people pay something and then they come in and they find more value. Now, some of them may want something even more. So you offer a coaching, for example, right? It could be online, offline, whatever the case may be in whichever markets you are. A simple funnel would look like that. So for whatever skills you've identified or whatever interests that you have that you want to explore, you may want to do a similar funnel. Think through this. Even if you have just 2 or 3, that's good enough. Maybe you just have something that's free and something that's paid for. Just 2 of them, that's good enough to get started, right? But you want to have in the back of your head something that can help you build a relationship for the long term and how you could monetize that and put that in a simple funnel like what I'm sharing on the screen. What people really want to see is, for the starters, when you give them free, is DIY. Can I do it myself? Majority of the people who go online, whether on YouTube, website, blogs, whatever, is to find solutions to problems they may have or challenges they may face and do it themselves, right? But you will find quite a number of them who want to do it with you, right? So that's why they want to go to workshops and learn certain skills, and you help them together. It could be photography skills or graphic design, right? And you do it with them as an expert. They learn from you and they build. But the money is really in something where people get things done for themselves. So that's why they would love to outsource their video production work or graphic work or social media management work. So that is when this is done for them. And that's where, it's a lucrative segment where you're going to have people willing to pay you a premium to actually get services or solutions done. Any questions on this so far? I'm going to take a quick pause. All right, let's move on. So many of you are familiar with, you may have come across or heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You may have read the books and stuff, right? If you actually go to his website, let me quickly open my browser. I want to jump into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. See, the moment I type, it's #1 on Google. That's something. Can you see my screen? All right, can you guys see my screen? Are you able to see the richdad.com website? Yes, no? Let me see the chat. Oh, cannot, okay. Let me. All right, are you able to see the screen now? Let me jump to the browser. Yes, can you see now? Okay, excellent. Thanks, Manisha. All right. So let's keep the sales funnel in the back of your head, and let's look at Rich Dad Poor Dad as an example, right? So you've got his about them, so very clear, the value proposition to elevate financial well-being of humanity, boost your financial IQ here. So you've got the best-selling product, which is his book, and then you have cash flow classic game. I haven't tried this game, so they've got that. So he's got his free blog. Remember what I said about blogs and free content? So you've got tons of those free things here. He's also got some video content. So routing you to YouTube, master the 6 basic rules of investing with Robert Kiyosaki, right? So he's got his free investing class, right? So that would be his number 4. And then you have find a personal finance class. So this is getting a bit more, right? So he's pretty much put all his stuff, all his content and the entire funnel on the website itself right away. So he's also got a podcast, personal finance coaching, right? And a live event. I'm assuming this is online, right? It's a live stream event, so it's free. And I'm pretty sure when you click on that, you're going to see how, it leads you to, a similar funnel where you'll have some free stuff, and then it takes you down for a paid event, so on and so forth, right? Now, this is roughly how you want to think about it in the back of your head for your business or your idea that you may have, and how you could sort of, you don't need to have all the things figured out right away, but if you've got a skill or a good idea of what you want, think through this funnel process and how you can sort of put it on paper and document it, right? Now, if you still don't have much clarity, there are 2 resources that I want to guide you to. Number 1 is ehow.com, right? ehow.com. These guys have tremendous amount of content, DIY, how to, for pretty much anything that you would love to explore, right? Feel free to go in, dig in, take something useful, improvise on that and share it across, or build your unique offering that you want to have as a free content or something. So this is a resource that I'd highly recommend you dig in and get ideas, inspirations, whatever you may need. The second one is a fantastic platform called dot-dash.com, award-winning one. They've got at least 20 different brands and products, websites, where you can get tons of resources. So for example, Very Well family brands, right? So this is specifically for wellness related, health related. Number 2 is for home brands, keeping your house beautiful, etc. Third is on making money online, Money Personal, Investopedia. I'm pretty sure you've bounced on their website for definitions of financial jargons, LifeWire, so on and so forth. So just go in, have a look at the different sites so you can get some inspirations, ideas, and that can help you with your product or information idea, right? Let's go back to our presentation. So those are 2 resources. And the more how-tos you have, later I'll show how how-tos are going to be very critical for your search engine optimization or marketing. People love those things, so you may want to have few of these on your website or blog, right? So now the next question is, I've got this, right? I've figured it out. I've got my idea. I have a rough idea of my funnel. How do I promote? How do I get people to know about my product or service? Now, this is where I'm going to spend bulk of the time. So walk with your idea in the back of your head and see if you find anything that's relevant. Not everything is going to be relevant. So these are the 6 different channels that I'll talk about, and an additional one towards the 7 of them in total. Keep your idea and walk through this, and please jot it down. And if you have any specific questions, wait till we finish the section and then you can ask, all right? So the first one, actually, before we even go into marketing, I would want to pass the floor to a good friend of mine, Manisha. She's someone who started with us in Groupon, who went on to do her own enterprise. And she has a kick-ass talent management agency. They do digital marketing, PR for some of the biggest brands in Malaysia and some of the best talents in Malaysia, right? So I'm going to quickly pass the floor to Manisha to share a bit on PR 101 for us, right? Let me share. Manisha?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me, Yacoob?
Yes, I can. Let me pull your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. And thank you so much for the introduction, Yacoob. So I'm just going to do this quite quickly for everyone so we can jump on board for the first slide. So I'm from mtalentasia.com and we are a talent and PR agency. So like Yacoob mentioned, we work with a lot of great talents here in Malaysia and we do quite a bit of public relations as well. So we can go to the next slide. So what actually is PR? So as Yacoob mentioned, I think before going into marketing, so marketing and promotions, because that's a lot of conversion, it's also important to think about your brand and conversation around your brand. And that's basically what PR is all about, conversation. So basically, PR is a branding tool. So in order to sell and to market your brand, you got to think about creating it and what's special about your brand and communicating that. And that's what PR is about. So here on this slide is basically the main difference between PR and marketing. So as you can see, in marketing, it's all about, increasing sales, advertising, buyers as audience, and it's temporary influence to basically engage into conversion. And whereas public relations is a lot about image building, two-way communication, long-term activities, building a diverse audience, and hopefully also giving birth to greater influence. So here on the right, if you see the image, there's a little bit of difference between marketing, where that's more owned media, and advertising is paid media, whereas public relations is basically earned. So reputation, conversation around your brand, that is all that will be earned based on what you're communicating about your brand. So here we just can summarize as PR educates your potential audience about why they should care and ultimately positions them towards a buying decision. So it's, you want to position your audience to be ready to buy, right? So that's why PR is coming before marketing. Okay, so today, we can go to the next slide, Yacoob. Today I'm going to share basically 6 quick tips that are PR related to build your brand in 2020. So we can go to the first one. The first one is basically spend some time to be a dedicated writer, whether it's yourself or basically someone in your team. It would be great for you to create a story, so write and create a story about your brand. So we'll just take a quick example about brands right now during this COVID-19 period. So if the brands that have jumped on board and basically have taken action, have recreated their stories or just sharing their stories they're doing right now, they are the brands that are staying in the hearts and the minds of the consumers. So that's a PR strategy there. So content is king, and when you have a great story and you can create content out of it, that also helps your brand online. So that's a quick tip is if you have a story to share, just like how Yacoob mentioned earlier, what's your niche, what's your strength, and if you can craft a story out of it, that's going to be a great place to start to basically sell your brand even more. So get down to being a writer or craft your story. Okay, so the second tip is basically, what's the next one? To identify your brand audience. So PR is also a lot about angles. So we've noticed also in the business model canvas earlier that there is a section for USP. What makes you different? What is your USP? So other than creating a story, you gotta also notice that why is your story different from someone else's, and that's the USP that you also want to focus on, right? So, and in PR, we take this USP and create angles to make it memorable in the hearts and minds of your audience. So it's very important, like this picture shows, to identify your unique selling proposition, your USP, define a clear objective, and keep it short and sweet. So that's very, very important. Okay, on to the third one, selecting the right channel. So like the example that Yacoob mentioned earlier with Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know, there's multiple channels that can be communicated on. So it's also very, very important to kind of have a different strategy for different channels. That's because there are different audiences in those channels. We'll just take a quick example. So for example, in television right now, you might be seeing a mature audience there, right? Like people in Gen X, you know, baby boomers, they might be still watching television. But if your product is telling a story for the Gen Z, you know, who are in their teens or below 20, then that's not the channel that you should spend your time on. But you should look at the internet, right, and digital social media channels. So there's a lot of different types of media out there, and PR works with these kind of strategies, and basically is creating and targeting strategies to channels where your audience will consume information, right? So that's really important to know. Selecting the right channels, that's an important tip. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, this is one of my favorites. It's basically being a thought leader. So once you've created or know what you want to sell online, you know, and you've created a story around it, you want to be known as the thought leader in that area or in that segment. So if you want to communicate this, it's also important to basically maybe even send a press release to the media, you know, or call up your media friends, or basically even in your own blog. You want to be seen as a thought leader in that service, in that area, in that field. So here's just a quick example of one of our talents. He was actually releasing a comedy album during the MCO, and we sort of angled it to be relevant during the time. So what we pitched to the media was basically, or even in these dark times, it would be great for people to have a good laugh too, you know, and stay positive. So basically that's a product that was being released during the MCO, but we've turned it around and angled it to remain relevant. So he's seen as a thought leader, you know, during these times, maybe a custodian of positiveness, happiness, you know, that's what Yacoob shared earlier as well. So here in the other picture is also some other examples of how thought leadership can work and staying relevant. Yeah, we can move to the next one. So the fifth one is basically building brand relationships. Now, PR is actually all about relationships, building relationships with different kind of stakeholders. So not only your team internally, your shareholders, you know, but also the most important stakeholders are your customers. So how do you build continuous relationships with your customers? So here's just an example of actually a pretty old campaign in 2011 by Coke in Australia, where they created sort of like a PR campaign to get more of the community to be part of their product and share their experience. So here it's about building a community of fans, your tribe, right? So what they wanted was just they put their product there, and they say like here, and they put the messaging across the board to share a Coke with a friend. Right, so if you're buying one for yourself, why don't you buy another one with a friend and share and have it be a Coke moment? So this was a very clear campaign, and it was well communicated across the board. So it's also important to build that communication, that consistency, and also this was specifically targeted at building relationships with their customers. So that's a good one. So build those brand relationships. You as a brand, what kind of relationship you want to build? Finally, my final tip for today is basically on influencer strategy. So why am I touching about influencer strategy? So what we've realized in PR as well is that in 2020 now, there's very gray area between PR, digital marketing, influencer marketing. It's all basically gelling together because we're all working towards pretty much the same thing. You know, at the end of the day, we want to sell, we want to promote something, and we want to get as many people conversating about that. So during this time at MCO, we also see a large spike in influencer marketing, because everyone's on their mobile phones, everybody's seeing more content online. So people are actually getting, influencers are getting more views and awareness on what they're talking about. And a lot of people out there also sharing more. So I think it's also important to actually look at influencer marketing or different parts of marketing channels in your PR strategy. So that's a good thing. So during MCO, there's built a spike. The other good thing about influencers is they already have followings, and your potential tribe or community could be there. So looking for the right influencer or KOL to partner or collaborate or have in your campaign is also very essential. So don't just reach out to anyone to see. It has to be a good fit for your campaign. So that's about it for today, that I wanted to share these 6 quick tips to help you build your brand in terms of PR. And that's it from me, and I'll pass it back to Yacoob.
Thank you, Manisha. So one of the key things I wanted to take from that is how you have 3 clusters, right? You have earned, you have paid, and then you have owned media. So the things that we'll talk about after this are basically going to be more on owned and free, right? Own and earned. Not so much on the paid. So the first building block you want to have are emails. You want to start building your email lists where you've got, regardless of what you do, whether you're selling product, information, service, whatever the case may be, you need to start generating an email list. So imagine this as your land on the online business. Number 2, second reason why you want to have this is because the conversion rates and the effectiveness of emails is still very high. It's 40 times more effective than other channels that you have, generally speaking, right? And the third thing is you can continue to monetize by selling personalized deals, offers, unlike other channels where it's very restricted. And once they give you an email, it stays with you, and you can always reach. The fourth reason is the reach for emails is still at 78%, whereas if you look at FB, Twitter, other social channels, about 1 to 2%. What that means is if 100 people have given you their emails, most likely at least 78% are bound to open your email if it comes from you. Whereas if you have a fan base on Facebook and you send out content, less than 1% are actually able to have beyond your circles. Even within your fan base or circles, the reach is very restricted. So if you want to tap into the entire 2 billion, whatever Facebook base they have, you have to pay for it, right? Unlike an email. And more importantly, no matter what happens to other social media platforms, you will always be able to reach out to your fans via email as long as you have their emails. So that is number 1. Number 2 is a blog or a website of your own, which becomes like your house, so to speak, where in the online world, this is your address. So if you are, let's say, XYZ, then it's xyz.com becomes your address. It could be a blog, it could be any platform, but have a centralized space which directs people to everything that you have, as we saw in the Rich Dad example earlier, right? 1/4 of online websites are blogs. So if there are 1 million of them, 250,000 happen to be blogs, right? So majority of them are consuming content which is still reading, and there is still a lot of demand, and you will continue to be listed higher in search through your blogs. As Manisha mentioned earlier, thought leadership, regardless of which industry you're in, is very, very critical these days, right? To position yourself as someone who has added advantage, insights, knowledge in their field, and you want to build that in the online world. And only when you have these can you actually monetize your niche via ads, affiliates. I'll share that towards the end, right? So you want to have your blog or website. While you do that, make sure you consider backlinks and SEO strategy or meta tagging your content, which is very important. Otherwise, no matter how much content you put, it won't be picked up by the algorithms on search or social platforms. The third one is search engine optimization. Now, you have your content on whatever platform and you have your blogs, but you don't have that, you're not being picked up by these algorithms or platform. And I'll tell you why that's critical. You'll see a slide very soon where you'll realize how important this is. And it's important for you to be optimized on search. Today, when people hear about you, the first thing they do is go and search whichever web they use, right? Google, Bing, whatever the search engine. So you are not who you say you are, but who search engines say you are, right? If you look at e-commerce, more than 30%, like 60, I would say about 50 to 60% still go direct to the website, buy their product, but 30% still search and get to, you know, the platforms they need or the products they need or services. So that is still very high, right? And social is at the bottom, as you can see, very, very less in case you're offering products or services. So you want to be optimized for search engines. So this is the top 100 website list as of, I mean, even now it would still be relevant. As you can see, if I can put visually, what are the sites that get the most amount of traffic? Number one is still Google, right? So they get about 60.49 billion. This was last year. By now, it would probably be about 70 plus billion a month. I mean, with COVID, it's probably even more than that, right? So they get more than 70 billion search in a month. The second one is YouTube, and then you have Facebook, right? So let's zoom in a little bit on this. If you look at the top 10 websites, if you're solid on Google, YouTube, and you have some content on Facebook, Microsoft is basically Bing and other stuff, you practically have, you know, 62% of the top 100 traffic generating sites online. So clearly it shows you how important it is for you to be optimized for these platforms, right? So this is the top 10 if you zoom in, right? So Google, YouTube, Facebook, Yahoo is still relevant for the news and so on, Twitter and Instagram as channels. So you want to be considering these channels and see how you could stay on top either on Google. Now, the second most important thing, if you notice, was that in terms of videos, it's not just YouTube, they're also the second largest search engine in the world. Now, you definitely want to be creating a lot of video content, partly because when you watch a video, you get hooked and they can keep pushing you a lot more ads. Google can push you a lot more ads, they own YouTube. And more importantly, you will also get ranked number one on Google. So you basically have number 1 and 2 covered if you focus on video content and you optimize SEO, and you'll naturally organically rank higher without even having to pay for it. The third reason with YouTube or any video content that you have, whether LinkedIn, whichever channels that you find to be a niche, you will notice that the viewing times are long, as I mentioned. Number 2 is the increased conversions that you get with video content. So this is 3 good reasons why you really need to be focusing on your video content strategy, right? Now, what about other social channels? So if I'm not on, much active on YouTube, I don't do video. If Google is practically dominating the whole space, what about the other platforms, right? So if you're into lifestyle or if you're into entertainment space, then you need to have a good presence on Facebook, because you can see here 87% of the audience in terms of referral traffic are actually consuming the content through Facebook. So if your niche is on lifestyle, entertainment, and any of these segments, then yes, you want to consider Facebook or Twitter, for example, right? These are breaking news. You want to be in the news or PR and other industries, you've got to have your presence on Twitter. Instagram is great for lifestyle as well. You've got tons of influencers there. Now you can even actually sell products. You have options where people can actually buy via Instagram. So that's great. TikTok is amazing. It's really picking up very fast. So if that's your cup of tea, go ahead, knock yourself. Now, it doesn't matter which platform you're in. It all comes down to what niche and whether those audiences are on these platforms and how can you leverage on those, right? That's the most important one. My personal favorite, because obviously my clientele are in the B2B space, LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is huge. The organic reach, if you remember, I told you Facebook and other channels are less than 1%. LinkedIn is way more than that, which means if they have about 750 million professionals now. And if your content or your feed, your post gets picked up, it can actually have a very, very, very wide reach. There are tons of them on LinkedIn. So definitely must be a go-to platform if you're catering to businesses, B2B, whatever the case. I would say I would highly recommend you brush up your LinkedIn profile. It has transformed tremendously in the last 2 years. I think since Microsoft took, it's no more just a job portal, but more so of a content platform now. So definitely a place to be. You've got 30 million companies. This is probably the only platform in the world where you have that sort of concentration of C-level executives, companies, and people who are educated, tech savvy, who are actually interested in learning stuff or in investing or consuming valuable content. So you want to be doing that. If you send a sponsored email in LinkedIn, it's actually 52% open rate, which compared to, let's say, your content or email marketing is actually almost double or triple depending on the industry, right? The last reason is 94% of B2B marketers, this is their #1 platform when it comes to content marketing. So here's one tip that you could, this is from Gary Vaynerchuk. If you Google him up, this guy is amazing. What he calls is a $1.80 strategy. Basically, you look at your Instagram or even in LinkedIn feed, whatever hashtag. Let's say if I'm looking at digital, for example, I would look at that hashtag and then see what are the content being posted. And I will go in and post 2 cents of valuable insight into that, right? So you want to be doing this for 90 pieces of content every single day. So if you do for 90 with 2 cents of your worth on each of these, either it could be a valuable content. Don't just go and post, hey, that's a good post, or I like it, or something like that. Leave something valuable that gives a reason for people to follow you or to come back to your page and read your content. So you continue doing this, I guarantee you're going to see results, not just on LinkedIn, whether it's on Instagram, other platforms. I've seen this work. Definitely try. Okay, so now that you have presence on these, a last thing I want to touch on is something which is called affiliate marketing, right? So you could have your own blog, you could have your own Facebook or YouTube, whatever channel, and you can actually sign up for being an affiliate with any platform, whether it's e-commerce, travel, etc., and actually leverage those platforms to monetize. Right? So you have, let's say, I'm actually going to answer the question of this person who asked me the question, if I'm a full-time traveler, how can I be a successful entrepreneur, right? So let me go back to Google quickly. All right. I am going to search for travel blog. Right. Okay. I have bucket list, trip fares, nomadic. So this guy seems to be doing a solo blog. So he's got a website. He's got a lot of posting, right? I'm going to click on the first one, travel hacking guide. So you can see he's got his stuff, his posts here, African safari, Tahiti, etc. So the first thing you would notice is the ads that pop up, right? So this is one way you monetize. Number 2, you can see the 3rd edition of his handbook that he's giving out. Here he's collecting his email lists. Now, if you scroll through and let's say he has a link, oops, there's a pop-up. If you look at the bottom, where you see the HTTPS, nomadic mat, there's a cart ID, you'll typically have a referral ID. So any product or any website or service that they actually list, you will find that usually they'll all route it back. So for example, here he may have African safari. Okay, this one doesn't have. It could be for booking.com or flights or whatever. And typically there will be affiliate revenue that they get out of it from these platforms. Right? And you could do that for Amazon, you could do that for Lazada, Jumia, every other platform. So when do we pay for traffic? Now, assuming you've already nailed your funnels and you're getting organic reach and you're seeing that there's traction, going back to your sales funnel, you will see that, okay, this is great. Let's validate it. So if I put $100 budget and I get 1,000 clicks, my cost per click is about 10 cents, 1,000 divided by 100. And of those 1,000 people who click, maybe 50% convert. So I've got 500 leads. And And maybe of those 5% convert to buy my ebook, right? So that gives me about $25. And then of this 500 leads, I have another 2% who convert for my online workshop. So that's another 10 people. And maybe I only have like 0.5% for my coaching. So that gives me about 2.5. So if you add up, it comes down to about 3,750. Now, if you don't do that, right? Let's say you just have your, you have a ad, paid ad that directly, channels people to coaching. Chances of them converting are going to be very less. Number one, because you don't have a solid relationship with them. B, they don't see you as a thought leader. This is just a random ad they saw and they go and they just bounce off. You won't have the yield that you saw in this particular scenario where you pump in after you've got your basics set. When you pump in $100, you can see the ROI. Your focus is actually to get on the conversion of a coaching practice, not so much on the others, but every step of the journey, you can actually validate your business, right? So if you pump in $1, it should come out to about 37.5 in this particular scenario, right? So that's when you go for paid traffic. Until and unless you've nailed it, don't bother spending money for paid. So finally, how do I piece this all together and automate? 2 platforms I wanted to highlight. Number one is ClickFunnels. Whatever I've shared here, you can actually automate the entire process, via ClickFunnels and actually leverage on this to measure every step of the journey and retarget them and push relevant ads. And they even have templates and everything. We should definitely dig in and try. If you have, let's say, a audience that's following you and you want some information products, check out ClickBank. They're free. Just sign up and get access to their platform where you can, let me see, I think I may have this open. I will quickly show you what it looks like. You can choose any type of product or niche and you can actually, no, this is Behance. So this is ClickBank. So I'm going to go into the affiliate marketplace. And you've got like all these categories. So for example, business and investing. So you can see like tons of these affiliate products which are readily available. You can just link them back on your YouTube or whichever platform you use. You can look at the average sale. What is the rebill rate? All these are actually defined on the website. You can just quickly check and see which is relevant to your audience. And you can actually start pushing these information products that you can leverage off the internet for free. Right? So the same can happen with Amazon and Booking.com. If you're a travel blogger, you want to definitely leverage on, have an affiliate ID on Booking, and then you could use that to tap into your audience base. So I think we probably have 2 minutes left. I apologize. I wanted to have a lot more time for Q&A, but feel free to ask any questions on any of these topics that were shared so far. Let me open my chat box to see if there's any. Will I be sharing these slides? I believe so. I'll leave it up to the WIEF team. Yes, it will be available. That's great. Is SEO analysis important to decide identity? Absolutely. I would definitely start off by just going to Google and searching your name, see what pops up, what do you get, and how you could okay, so there are some tools. It's good you asked. There are some tools. I would recommend Moz. Go to Moz. They're an authority for this. Go in. There's a lot of free content there. Check it out. Number 2, I would say look at backlink ko. This link that I've shared here. Very, 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 very useful. If you just log into this, I'm pretty sure you're going to spend like a few weeks getting over with just these 3 links for SEO optimization, right? So these will be shared. Have a look, and if you have any follow-up questions, you already have my email, so you can reach out and just feel free to ask. And that way, I think it'll be very relevant. So what I've shared is a very broad and overview. Whatever is relevant to you, I think you can take from this and tailor it to your audience and start building this, right? So remember, it's not about selling, it's about building relationships, building a tribe and community for starters, and then eventually you will be able to monetize all this. With that, thank you very much for staying for the last 1.5 hours. I hope there was some benefit out of this. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to be here for a few more minutes.
You think you will come down to Jakarta and have a direct training or a coach down here?
Is that addressed to me or to WIEF?
I think both.
Yeah. So as for me, I would be happy to do that. If you have a small community, why not? And I think WIEF does a lot of those engagement events with youth network and stuff. So you may want to sign up and keep track of those. And definitely, I'm pretty sure they'll have a lot more exciting events lined up for this year and next. So keep a lookout on those for events that might be relevant for you. Thank you for your kind words. I'm sure Manisha is equally delighted. Hopefully it's of benefit. Thanks, Alex. All right. Novita, I hope you found some answers to how to convince clients and trust when you're starting on with products and service. If you have any further questions, feel free to email us.
All right. Thank you, Yacoob, so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's session. Now, we truly hope that you have gained valuable input, which will be beneficial to your online business journey. Yeah. So thank you, Zohab, Yacoob, and everyone for being here today and making this workshop a success. Now, please spare some time to complete the survey form we've prepared for you at the end of session. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube for regular news and happenings. Now, on behalf of WIEF Foundation, thank you for joining us today and have a great day ahead.